Hello and welcome everybody here in the European Parliament to this EPP Group talk on organized crime. How do we combat it? How do we break down these criminal networks in the EU? Organized crime, let me count the ways, and that's why the EPP Group has 50 proposed actions on how to combat organized crime. And joining me to talk about this is Tomas Tobé of Sweden, Jeroen Lenaers of Netherlands, and you're both on the Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committee, Libe, as they say in short. And this comes after an EPP Group hearing that you both hosted on organized crime that include panelists from Europol, Eurojust, EPPO, that's the European Public Prosecutor's Office, the European Commission, that was DG Home Affairs, and we want to talk about the upshot of that as well. Let me just mention one thing. I saw a couple of actions taken by law enforcement recently. One was Eurojust and Europol with authorities in Italy, Belgium, and Germany against international drug trafficking allegedly by 'Ndrangheta, the Italian criminal organization. 31 suspects arrested, assets worth 3.8 million seized, over 800 officers in the raids, mainly cocaine from South America, hidden in cars and food. Okay, great. And this happens a lot, right? But it's still a drop in the bucket, isn't it? Because when we look at the statistics, statistics show that only about 2% of proceeds from organized crime are frozen and 1% are confiscated. What's wrong with that picture, right? How do we do more? So we have these 50 actions by the EPP Group that are proposed. One of them is on Europol, giving Europol stronger powers. Who wants to take that first? Maybe Tomas, because you got the Swedish presidency too, right?
Yeah, true. No, but I think it's very clear. I mean, if we look at the criminal networks that we have in Europe today, I mean, they are operating in several member states at the same time. And of course, we can see at member state level, of course, our authorities try to combat this, but it's not enough.
No.
And that's why from EPP, we are being quite clear now. We need a much stronger European response. And of course, everybody's already been talking about that we need to share more information together. Yeah. We need a stronger Europol. That has been, of course, the line of EPP for many years. But what we are now taking and putting on the table is that perhaps we also need to make Europol more operational.
Right.
Because we need to stop a lot of the weapons that come into Europe and, of course, a lot of the drugs. Because this is what makes also the criminal gangs so strong.
Yeah.
And perhaps we need to have a Europol that actually can be more effective in decreasing this. Of course, it's a big task, but we need to start somewhere.
So during that hearing that you both hosted, Jeroen, what was the upshot of that? Because Europol was there,
yes,
along with other crime-fighting groups, organizations in the EU. What was the upshot of that talk?
Well, I think, first of all, to also underline what Tomas said, that's really important. We see that 70% of organized crime in the European Union is active in more than 3 member states. That we have abolished the borders within Europe, but we see that criminals still manage to use these borders to hide their criminal model. So it's very important that we have a cross-border approach, and European agencies like Europol are crucial. And we talk a lot about Europol in this house, about the way it has to deal with data, what its competences are. The hearing that we organized, it was very important to speak with Europol and to also ask them the question, listen, what would you actually need? We're convinced that they need this more operational approach. But what would you actually need in order to deliver on that?
Yeah, what tools do you need, right?
What tools? And I think this was also a wider issue in the hearing that we've had. There's a huge concern in the law enforcement community. It's also been picked up by the Swedish presidency, put it as a very high priority, and it's the risk of going dark. We see that there is more and more technology developed for us to protect all our communications, end-to-end encryption, protected communication models. But at the same time, we see that criminals use the same technology. They use better technology, and law enforcement is always one step behind because they cannot penetrate this layer of communication. And all of the interlocutors we spoke to, whether it's the Public Prosecutor's Office, whether it's Eurojust, Europol, the Belgian Minister of Home Affairs was there as well. This was one of the key issues, and we need to make sure that we equip our law enforcement community, including Europol, with the appropriate means, also in a digital society, to protect us all.
So, exchange of data, more resources. And what about this meeting?
But not only exchange of data.
Yeah.
You need to have a way to penetrate into the communication models of criminals.
Right.
Without sort of breaking the protection for all of us.
Yeah. There's a fine line there.
And just to add to this, because I mean, this is really a political fight also here in the European Parliament. I mean, this week in Strasbourg, we will have a vote on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And of course, we need to regulate it. We need more common rules.
Yeah.
But one of the political question is that we think, of course, our authorities need to have the opportunity, for example, to use facial recognition when it comes to prevent a terrorist from making even more attempts and to make terrorist deeds.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
Or perhaps, for example, if you are in a situation where you have kidnapped a child.
Yeah.
But the left of this house is saying, no, you should not have this.
No.
This is
Right.
about the personal integrity. And I always ask them the question, how can the personal integrity of the terrorist be more important than preventing a terrorist attack in our countries?
Okay, and
this is a political fight that we need to take from EPP now.
Right. Another related action was this meeting among the Justice and Home Affairs ministers, where they agreed on a migration and asylum pact that could have impact on smuggling networks, right? On people smuggling. Can you comment on that, maybe, Jeroen?
But I think maybe Tomas is our lead.
Tomas is the migration
he's our lead negotiator on the migration pact. So I would ask Tomas first on this.
Could
You
this help?
don't know everything, but
could this help to fight
but
people
seriously,
smuggling?
I think what we need to say is, I mean, this is huge. I mean, for the Swedish presidency to be able to deliver a strong support in council, to be ready to negotiate together with us in the European Parliament.
With the Parliament, yeah.
Because I think we are really at a crossroad now. I mean, we have to kind of make a decision. Should we have more control? Do we need to have more European migration policy, yes or no? And I think most of us understand that we have a common border that we need to have better control of. We need to register all the people that comes. Everybody understands that we have too many people coming to Europe that don't have the right to asylum in Europe. They are economic migrants and they need to return. Because then it will be easier for us to solve perhaps one of the hard questions. How should we how can we make sure that we have solidarity between the member states? And finally now, we are in a position where we actually now can start negotiation together. I very much look forward to this because I think for EPP, it has been a big priority for a long time because I think our citizens demand that we actually have more control of the migration. And to your question about the smugglers, today it is the smugglers who decide the volume of migrants to Europe. And this cannot, I mean, we need to have more cooperation with third countries. We need to crack down on the smugglers and also send the message that if you don't have the right to asylum to Europe, you should not pay a lot of money to a smuggler. You should not go into a very dangerous boat and try to cross the Mediterranean. It's a bad idea.
So there's a linkage there. Also, the ministers agreed on their position on a draft directive on asset recovery, following the money, basically. And that is also one of the actions that the EPP Group wants, is to follow the money, setting up this new anti-money laundering authority, AMLA, to go after that money. You want swift and full implementation of that AMLA package, right?
No, absolutely, and it's also good to see. I have to say that quite a few of the points that we have written down in our position paper last year on how to tackle organized crime in the European Union are already on the table now, and we're working towards the legislative conclusion. I think anti-money laundering is absolutely crucial because if criminals have no opportunity anymore to launder their criminal money into proper normal money, it will really hurt the business model. So that's a key priority. And the confiscation package is also crucially important, because what we see now, and I see this also locally in my area, we have a lot of drugs-related criminality in my area in the Netherlands. When we catch criminals and we manage to prosecute them, it is still very complicated to reach into their pockets, so to say. If the money, if the expensive cars, if the jewelry, if the watches, if they are not in the Netherlands but in Belgium or Germany, which are very nearby to where I live, it's a very bureaucratic procedure with very limited results. And this whole package of freezing, confiscation of assets, following the money, hit them where it hurts the most, in their wallets, that's the only way to do this. And we need European coordination on this, because it is, like we said, it is a European issue, and we cannot treat this only from within the borders of the member states.
Yeah, because there are a number of countries, including the Netherlands, that are reclaiming land from the mafia and handing it over for social purposes. I saw a report on Euronews about that. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Any case, let's move into cross-border information exchange, that data exchange. That's something else that the EPP Group is calling for. Given the lack of this cross-border information exchange, the criminal groups can relocate their activities from one member state to another. You got a good story on that, don't you? They can move their...
But this is I think, first of all, we have to also recognize that a lot has happened already in the European Union in the past 10, 15 years in order to improve data information sharing between member states, joint investigation teams, the police cooperation that we have now also put into legislation. So there's a lot of things that happen, and we can be proud of that.
Yeah.
But it's not enough yet.
No.
And I think that's also very clear in our position paper. We need to have more information exchanges and also more in real time and quicker.
Like that business that shifted from the Netherlands just over the border to Germany.
But this is a key issue, because this is what we're talking about, not about criminal data or justice data, but about administrative data.
Yes.
We have the situation in the Netherlands where a mayor can, for instance, close a restaurant or a pub or revoke the license if there is a situation of drugs abuse. But we cannot share that information with our neighbors. Now, I come from an area where we have more borders with Germany and Belgium than with the rest of the Netherlands. So this mayor that I refer to, he had to sit there and watch a bar owner for which he had revoked the permit simply move 6 kilometers to the east, different European country, and he was not allowed to inform his neighbor on the German side about the potential danger of this particular person.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And I think this is the next step. We're not there yet, but this is something we also need to focus on in Europe.
What about hiding the money to cryptocurrencies? Tomas, can I ask you about that? That's another action that the EPP Group has on that list of 50 actions, combat misuse of cryptocurrencies and organized crime. How do you want to do that?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we see not only private persons, but especially the criminal networks. They have used the situation that we have now, that this is not regulated, to be honest. And what we are calling for now, and I must say I'm very glad that we had a very broad majority also in the European Parliament, basically making sure that we will now have more common rules, and that we will actually also demand from the providers that they need to gather information, they need to share information, because this is a way for them, of course, to hide very much of these assets that they obtain.
Right. What about, let's see, I'm just taking down the list, borders and third countries cooperation. More than 50% of the suspected members of criminal networks in the EU are non-EU nationals.
Wow.
The EPP Group wants a consolidated Schengen borders code. And, of course, about the golden visas, the same thing. Is get everybody on the same page, right?
Get everybody on the same page, and I think also we need to be a bit more clear. We need to deport more people from the Union. They are not citizens of our Union. They are here to commit crime, and we cannot keep accepting this. So I think also sometimes we need to be a bit more clear than we have been.
Okay, and then a little bit more on data exchange. I see this PRUM framework. Can you talk about that? That has proved to be an important tool in cross-border law enforcement.
Absolutely. But maybe first also to pick up on the previous point.
Okay.
Because one thing that is very important, so we're here in Strasbourg, about 2 kilometers to the east from here, there is a basement where we have the servers of many of the EU information systems. So on the Eurodac for migrants and people crossing our borders, on the Schengen information system, on the visa information system, on ECRIS TCN, we all have these servers there. And they're in the same basement about 20 centimeters apart from each other. But they cannot be linked to each other.
Why? Why not?
Because they were built for different purposes, from different legal bases, etc., etc. So one of the things we've done, and which we also highlight in this this position paper, is we need to bring this all together. We need to make sure that if we have one of these third country nationals who is a criminal, that we can see this before he ever reaches the European Union by comparing all the data that we have available, and not only in the little silos that we have.
Automated exchanges of fingerprints, vehicle registration,
this is
DNA data.
This is Prüm.
So
Prüm is it's named, I think, after the town in Luxembourg where it was first established. It's very important.
And add facial recognition.
Yes, and now this is added. We have Paulo Rangel, EPP, is leading the work in the Parliament on the renewal of Prüm to make it more efficient, to make it quicker, because sometimes now we see that in this data exchange it works well, but it sometimes takes a lot of time. And to also bring it into line with the modern requirements.
What do you say that some critics, probably other parties, are saying, wait a minute, what about privacy? What about misuse by some governments to nail some of their political opponents? How do you prevent that from being misused?
I think in Prüm that is really not the issue here. I understand that, of course, we are currently, unfortunately, in the European Union, where in a number of member states there are serious rule of law deficiencies, mainly Poland and Hungary. And anything we do in terms of justice cooperation, we need to take that into consideration. But in Prüm, when we talk about license plates, facial images, fingerprints, that is really based on clear conditions and a clear framework. So I'm not afraid of that. It is, I would really invite the colleagues also in this House who are sort of ideological critical of these kind of proposals. To spend a week with local law enforcement in cross-border areas. If you want to solve any crime, you need to have information exchange with your colleagues on the other side of the border. If not, we leave border regions in the EU as a massive playground for criminals at the expense of our citizens. This is something we need to solve. It's what the EPP wants to solve. And if other groups want to make that as complicated as possible, then they explain that to the citizens in the elections next year.
Massive playground for criminals.
Yeah.
It's a good hashtag.
But it's exactly,
there, right?
it's exactly the same point that Tomas made when we talked about artificial intelligence. If your child goes missing, if your child is abducted, would you want law enforcement to use all the available technology to find your child? Or would you say, no, but I'm ideologically against finding my child?
Right. Right. Yeah,
let's have that debate.
Another example. One more thing I wanted to hit on, because I know we're running out of time, but I think it's important. Is another action that the EPP Group wants is this problem of blank firing weapons being converted into live firing weapons. EPP Group wants to put an end to that, right? Any comment on that?
No. We have a huge issue with guns in the European Union. We see guns, guns used in the Yugoslavian war that are ended up in depots that are now coming into the market. We see guns that were never supposed to be fired now being transformed into real shooting guns.
And there's a firearms directive already.
Yes,
but
it doesn't work properly, so it needs to be updated.
Right. There you go.
Period.
I want to do a quick look at the Swedish presidency, because now it's wrapping up.
It's coming to an end.
So we could talk about this for a half an hour, but what are a couple of the key points, and where do we go from here?
But
Spain takes it over next.
Of course, I think the Swedish presidency also, the priorities has been very much aligned with the EPP Group, to be honest. Combating cross-border crime. Of course, a lot of focus on the support for Ukraine. I would also like to add the question of competitiveness, because I think that is also a crucial point for Europe in the future, because the economic situation that many people are under now, it's really, really important now that we have reforms to make the European economy stronger.
Good. So, it's a job, always a work in progress, but progress made.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and of course, I must say that we now have a position in the council on the migration package is
Right.
huge,
Right.
And hopefully this can also lead that we, together with our Spanish friends, let's see who is elected. We have Spanish elections. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Partido Popular will come to office.
see. We'll
But
see.
anyway, we need
Yeah.
to finalize the migration pact under the
matter
Spanish
what.
presidency.
No matter what. Tomas, Jeroen, thank you so much, and thanks to
Thank you.
all of you for watching this EPP Group talk on law enforcement, fighting organized crime. And keep in mind, at EPP Group for any social networking. I like that playground reference. That was a playground for organized crime. We want to prevent that.
Yes.
So that was a good tweet. And also eppgroup.eu for any further information. My name is Chris Burns. See you next time.